Ferrari leaves Silverstone with mixed feelings. On one hand, the 4th place of Hamilton, on the other, the 0 of Leclerc out of the points after a strategic gamble that objectively did not pay off. In today's video, we must listen to Frederic Vasseur's statements. After the race, we go to hear Hamilton and Leclerc, and we go to see what the situation is at Ferrari's home. Also, in view of the next Grand Prix at Spa, what are they preparing at Maranello? Before we start, please leave a supportive like, and now let's see everything in detail. Charles' race ended on the first lap, so Vasseur is direct. The Monegasque asked to return to the pits to mount the slicks, convinced that the track was drying up, but it took just 1 lap to understand the mistake. Already after the first pass, he was 5 seconds slower than the one ahead of him. The call was his, but I could have also told him no, Vasseur said. In such situations, with a very slow formation lap behind the safety car, evaluating the grip is very challenging. The result is that Leclerc found himself trapped in dirty air without pace to recover. Sometimes it took us 10 laps to overtake, yet once free we were much faster, explains Vasseur. Another Grand Prix wasted due to execution errors, not so much pure performance. In fact, Ferrari led in Q1 and Q2 on Saturday but collapsed in Q3. Leclerc mentioned a technical issue, but Vasseur minimized it, stating that execution was the actual problem. Every detail matters in these qualifiers. Sun, clouds, and pit exit timing can change everything in a 6-car battle in mere seconds. However, there's also a matter of setup. In fact, Vasseur admits it. Charles has made a step forward on the race pace thanks to the setup, but this choice makes qualifying more complicated for him. 2 years ago, I told him that points are made on Sunday. In 2023, we made 5 or 6 poles, but no victories. Leclerc is striving to be a more well-rounded driver, but the trade-off is a less impressive qualifying performance on Saturdays. Charles is very self-critical, perhaps too much, adds Vasseur, and this sometimes becomes a limit, but we as a team appreciate that he takes his responsibilities. And with half the championship behind, Vasseur takes stock, and he does it without illusions. Catching up to McLaren will be very tough. They have a technical advantage, and also in points. Winning all remaining races doesn't guarantee we'll be champions. The reality, according to the main team, is that Ferrari now needs to focus on concrete objectives. We are still in competition with Mercedes and Red Bull, and we want to win some races. It would be important for the team, for confidence and morale. It's no longer time for world dreams, but for stage victories. Yes, with 11 Grand Prix remaining, each weekend presents a chance to reclaim the top spot. Provided that they don't make any more mistakes in execution and find a way to make the SF25 work even when the sky turns grey. And Charles, it's true that he complicated the race for himself, stopping on the first lap, taking a risk different from his teammate. Moreover, his driving style is less effective under these conditions. In fact, a car that oversteers too much makes the rear unstable. It can be managed with more grip, but when the grip decreases as well as the asphalt temperature, well, you struggle to handle this rear. But we also need to hear Lewis Hamilton's words on Silverstone, because he is a bit more optimistic. The SF25 doesn't like these conditions, but now I know what I want from the next Ferrari, Silverstone. It was supposed to be the weekend of Lewis Hamilton's first podium in red. Instead, the 7-time world champion finished 4th behind a heroic Nico Hülkenberg, who after over 230 Grand Prix finally achieved his first career podium. And for Hamilton, only regret remains. Regret for a difficult-to-drive Ferrari, an imperfect strategy, and above all, weather conditions that highlighted all the limitations of the SF25. Every turn was a skid, Hamilton said. And at the end of the race, Hamilton said it bluntly. The car doesn't like these conditions. It was slippery, unstable, and unmanageable. I was losing the rear at every turn. I went wide in turn 3. I lost a lot of time. Then I made other mistakes. But the real problem was that I couldn't trust the car. That trust that every driver looks for to really push, it just wasn't there at that moment. It's like building a wall and then tearing it down every time. When you can't build trust in the rear end, you're in no man's land. And I felt like that for almost the entire race. And Hamilton doesn't hide it. We lost 3-4 positions with the strategy. The first pit stop's timing was poor and crucial for the race. Vasaro shared a behind-the-scenes story post-race. Ferrari lost the global positioning system signal on Lewis's car. They didn't even know where he was on the track, and this affected all the work of the pit wall. Making the situation worse was the behavior of the SF25 in slow corners. I had too much understeer. I started braking with the left front and I couldn't get it to turn anymore. I tried to correct with the knobs, but there was nothing to be done. But, as said before, Hamilton found something good. Now, I know what I want from the 2026 Ferrari. Amid the difficulties, Hamilton found a starting point to begin anew. The free trials on the dry went well. We were the strongest in qualifying, and I liked the balance on the dry. Even though we didn't get much from this race, I clearly understood what I don't want. In the 2026 car, the future Ferrari project, which Hamilton is already considering, will need to be built around him as clearly referenced. The indications he gathered this weekend will be invaluable for the development of the new single-seater, the one that will really have to bring him to victory in red. And then, a final relaxing message. The car today is much easier to drive compared to the beginning of the year. And also the relationship with Riccardo Adami is improving. Now we understand each other better. The feeling is clear. Lewis wants more, and even if Silverstone didn't give him the podium, it gave him a more precise vision of where to go. Ferrari is not yet where he would like it to be today, but every weekend he adds a piece. And with the right work, that confidence that was missing today could become his best weapon in the second half of the season. And even Leclerc himself has said that he wants to learn from Hamilton how to drive this car, the SF25, in wet track conditions. Because Leclerc at Silverstone had one of the worst races of his career, he admitted it himself. At Silverstone everything went wrong and Charles doesn't deny it. 14th place finish. Poor strategy and pacing with numerous mistakes made. The Monegasque has the clear feeling of having ended up in a weekend that didn't even seem like Formula 1, a nightmare race that the Monegasque defines without excuses. The strategy was a wrong decision. The point, however, is that the tire choice was just the tip of the iceberg. In fact, as we also said yesterday in the post-Grand Prix, it's a gamble to try two different strategies with the two drivers. Hamilton stays on track with intermediate tires. Leclerc has returned to mount the slicks, the dry tires a gamble. He believed that the track would dry quickly, Leclerc, but it wasn't so. The first and second sectors seemed to be for slicks, but the third was still too wet. I thought it would improve quickly, but I was wrong. This is what Charles said. But the real problem is that his race pace was completely absent. That's the most crucial thing to analyze. I had no rhythm and can't explain why yet. Lewis Hamilton's experience is key here. Charles admits he hasn't seen Hamilton's data yet, but Hamilton was clearly much faster. It's useful because when only one of the two drivers is struggling, at least you have a reference. If we were both in crisis, it would have been impossible to understand anything, right? But let's also talk about the rear suspension and the problem in qualifying. In fact, Leclerc was clear, I don't think it will be resolved soon. In fact, when asked in a comment about the new rear suspension expected at Spa, Charles doesn't commit. I can't answer on this. And even about the mysterious problem he claimed in qualifying, he said he thinks it's not solvable in the short term. A statement that smacks of resignation.
Because if
a team like Ferrari admits to not having a quick solution to a structural problem in qualifying where absolute trust is needed, then the situation is more serious than it seems. The Silverstone race has revealed the SF25's weaknesses and the issues in Leclerc's relationship with this car. A nervous and unpredictable car, but you can learn from these moments. And Charles knows it and said, I will work hard to understand what happened. And we also have to talk about the contact with Carlos Sainz because that was very serious. In fact, Leclerc made one mistake after another. In an attempt to recover at least some points, Charles finds himself wheel to wheel with Carlos Sainz. First they brush each other in turn 4, then comes the harder contact in turn 15. Leclerc, skidding, also damages the front wing of the Williams. And Leclerc said, I'm sorry for Carlos, I was trying to defend the position, but it was another mistake of mine. And he paid for it too. A black day in all respects where even in hand-to-hand combat, clarity was lacking. And the point is that Leclerc's setup is too extreme and therefore can't help him in the wet. The Monegasque explains that he had to drive a second off the limit times to avoid risking ending up in the wall. While Hamilton was able to go faster, having a less extreme setup, more load at the rear and therefore managing to have more grip even in fast corners. And on the clash between Leclerc and Sainz in turn 15, Leclerc totally messed up. He literally ruined Sainz's race. So in that case, a penalty was also warranted. As for turn 4, he made a decisive overtake, but obviously there's nothing there to
complain about. However,
I also agree that Leclerc had a very negative race at Silverstone. We expect more from the Monegasque and hope he will be able to do something better also in view of next year. Because by 2026, Ferrari wants to have two top-level drivers who can both fight for the title. Having said that, I want to comment on two last episodes, one from Verstappen and one from Alonso. Max Verstappen has never minced words, and after Silverstone 2025 he has crossed every limit. The race was pointless, we're not fighting for the world championship anyway, so I don't care. These are heavy words sounding like a bomb, not only in sports but also politically, because behind that I don't care hides a deep discomfort. The weekend was expected to start well with pole position on Saturday after difficult weeks, but it fell apart on Sunday.
everything with...
In the rain, the Red Bull became imprecise and unmanageable. Max finished 5th, behind Hülkenberg, Russell and Hamilton. In the post-race, he criticized the team, the car, and the situation. Content appears to be incomplete. Please provide the full text to be shortened. A fierce confrontation broke out in the Silverstone paddock. Jos and Christian clashed face-to-face. A tense conversation hinted at an atmosphere of confrontation. The exchange was between unnamed individuals. And it's no coincidence that market rumors have started circulating again this weekend. Sky Deutschland directly asked if Max Verstappen will stay at Red Bull in 2026, suggesting it's a possibility. When this question was asked to Max, Max replied, "I don't want to talk about it." A silence that speaks louder than 1,000 words. In the past weeks, Verstappen has been in contact with Wolff. He has avoided any confirmation about his future, and now he defines a race where he fought like a lion for nothing as useless. If Red Bull doesn't give him guarantees for 2026, is divorce really on the table? And this means there's a collapse of the Red Bull Silverstone dynasty. The latest episode reveals a technical crisis, broken team rapport, and low morale. Max is exhausted, jaded, and lacking trust. And if even he can't save the day anymore, maybe something big is really about to happen. In fact, I want to understand from you too. Will Verstappen really leave Red Bull? Will Mercedes be his next team from 2026? Or is it all a strategy within Red Bull to try to oust Horner and to have a less hierarchical structure? Red Bull faces its own challenges while Fernando Alonso, despite scoring points, remains unsatisfied with his current situation. In fact, the 9th place at Silverstone, 4th consecutive finish in the top 10, but being behind Stroll is not what he hoped for. The strategy did not convince the two-time world champion at all. Alonso asserted himself on the team radio and in a post-race interview with DAZN Spain stating, "I will stop when Lance stops. Because his group of engineers is usually much more precise. A harsh jab at his own pit crew after once again finding himself chasing due to, in his opinion, wrong choices. Too late on the throttle at the start, switching to slicks too early, the result, points thrown away." And Alonso clearly states, "We have another car that doesn't give information, yet they manage to stay third. We get lost in the details." In fact, Stroll finished ahead of Alonso despite making 2 more pit stops. The reason is that the team executed perfect strategies on the Canadian side, starting with the intermediate and then soft before the water, all at the right time. The MR25 is finally showing encouraging signs with the latest updates, but Alonso needs more. Today's strategy lost us points, unlike last week's successful one-stop approach in Austria. Alonso has lost some trust in his pit crew. And when a driver with 20 years of experience comes to say that he relies on the decisions of his teammates' pit crew, something is not right. We'll see how it evolves, the situations. In Red Bull and Aston Martin, the driver market is certainly hotter than ever. Verstappen could go to Mercedes and Alonso wants some more guarantees at Aston Martin. Martin, share your thoughts in the comments on the topics discussed in this video. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos on the channel. I'll leave you with some related videos here from Rastaduto. See you in the next video.